Welcome, everybody. This is our newest podcast. We are focusing here, and we're sponsored by Responsible Parents for Wilson School Board, but this is definitely not a Wilson exclusive podcast. This is a series focusing almost exclusively on safety. Safety for students, safety for teachers, safety for staff, administrators, anybody who has anything to do with educating our children. We want to make sure that we're all sharing information and finding out ways that we can kind of come together and bring a little bit of enlightenment to each other's lives to figure out how we can make our kiddos as safe as heck. Next to me, my name is Craig Stoneha. Next to me is my wife, Lisa Marie. She is the creator of this series and will be taking over hosting, I guarantee, within minutes. And to our right is our guest, Officer Johnson from the Spring Township Police Department. We are extraordinarily pleased that you could make it and fortunate to have you as part of the Wilson family. And also, how many schools are you currently?
Well, the Wilson School District has 5 elementaries, 2 middles, and a high school.
Okay.
We're about, I think, just over 6,400 students.
Wow. So, and it's really just you, right? I mean, you have some other guys helping you, but...
Yes, I mean, I'm dedicated just to be in the schools during the school year.
Now, you help some other schools, though, too. You help... Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, we take care of all of our Spring Township campus, and as well as Lower Heidelberg has Green Valley and West, and Lower Heidelberg has control over that, but I assist them with some of the minor things where we're just talking to students. Any criminal activity would be handled by Lower Heidelberg. Now Conrad Weiser, Governor Mifflin, YO, they have school resource officers or school police officers, and we communicate often because that's what it's about. You want to communicate with other officers who are doing this specific type of assignment.
Fantastic. Now, I know that the whole series is on safety, but specifically today we're talking about internal threats at schools. And by internal threats, kind of what we're talking about is maybe assaults by students on teachers, or dangerous situations by maybe emotionally challenged students, or things like that. Do you see that in the work that you do for the schools?
You're going to, obviously, the bigger the school, you're going to see more issues. If you have, right now in the high school we have about 2,100 students, give or take. So you're going to see more incidents, whether it's criminal or just behavior that's not the best. You have a school with 500 kids, you're still going to see things. We all have the same issues. It's just, how's it occurring? How often is it occurring? We go in spurts. There's times we have some incidents and it goes sort of quiet for a while. Do we see acts of assaults, whether it's student on student, student to teacher? Yeah, there are times that's happening. So
now, does it feel like it's gotten worse with everybody? It's almost like COVID's become a defining line in our lives. Do you feel like it's gotten worse since COVID, since the schools were closed and brought back, or do you think it's kind of stayed the same?
I think, I'm 49. When I went to school, we never had a pandemic. This is the first time I think a lot of, the 3 of us in this room and anyone that's going to watch has ever experienced something like this. It was new to be a police officer. I'm on my 27th year, and we watched COVID hit and everything shut down. The stores shut down, the vehicular traffic was at a minimal amount, and our average call volume went down drastically. Okay. I think when you sort of reopen slowly, the businesses, the schools, houses of worship, things along those lines, people started coming out, but I think there was also a mental aspect to it. If people had mental health issues, I think it sort of pushed it a little further. I think people that were cooped up for some time maybe are now displaying some mental health issues. And that's not an excuse, but we saw as a police department, our call volume dropped dramatically. We only were averaging maybe 6 to 12 calls a day, where on a normal day we would handle 35 to 50. Oh, wow. But then as months went on, we started seeing some domestic violence kick in because people were cooped up. People were starting to get frayed at the ends, and the person or persons they were living with, whether it's children, a spouse, or whatever, that was sort of getting pushed to the limits. So when schools reopened, things were a little quiet, and then, personally, I didn't see a lot more acts of assaults or violence or drugs. It was more mental health things we were starting to see. Kids that were maybe lost now. That sort of shut them down because they weren't getting the social aspects. As adults, we socialize. As a police officer, I'm dealing with people on a regular basis. And again, there was sort of a drawback of, I'm not dealing with people. Who am I talking to? As a older guy, I felt that once we got back in swing things, it was normal. But I saw more issues with students than ever before. Again, the criminal activity would go up and down. I can't say directly that I have any statistics to say, yes, pandemic caused this or COVID caused this. But kids were a little more squirrely because they never dealt with that, and they maybe didn't know how to handle it like an adult would.
Yeah.
I know Lisa Marie and I never shut down, and I can guarantee you the adults were more squirrely too. Like we were dealing with them the whole time, and yeah.
Well, one of the things you had mentioned is often parents are surprised when their child is involved in something, but then if they look back, there were signs. Can you talk about what are some of those signs that parents should be looking for? Like if your child is starting to head down a dangerous path.
You know, I think there has to be a lot of involvement, parent to child or children. You know, as a young man growing up, my parents were on me. Mm-hmm. They knew my friends. They knew my friends' names, first and last name. They knew addresses. They knew the parents. They would want to meet the parents. So there was a lot of connectivity with the group of friends I grew up with. Nowadays, we've evolved to social media, cell phones, and how do we stay in touch with people? We text them. Mm-hmm. We are FaceTiming them. We're in a constant communication, which is a good thing if used properly. But when we're dealing with children, you know, you have a responsibility as a parent. Number one, the device that you've given that child is like giving them keys to a car. You're responsible for that activity on that phone. So you should know who your child's talking to. Mm-hmm. Who are his or her friends? You know, have you met their parents? You know, there are signs, and there's websites out there that are sort of telling you, do you have a child who is, number one, exhibiting irrational behavior? Are they going to bed now at 2 and 3 in the morning? Is there an I don't care attitude? Are they giving things away? Are they hiding things from you? These are things that you need as an adult to look into. Mm-hmm. There are websites out there. There are ways to find out what your child's doing. One of those things is go through that phone. You know, we just dealt with a student who had sort of run away. The child was located, and nobody had the address of where the child was at. You know, they didn't know last names or anything like that, and that hinders any type of communication of, hey, look, if my child does this again, your name is Jim Smith, what's your phone number, what's your address? You know, as a police officer who responded to this call to follow up, they didn't have any pertinent information. So again, as a parent, that's your responsibility to, you know, go through your child's phone, know who your child's friends are. You know, I have parents say to me, well, Officer Johnson, can I take the door off the hinges to the bedroom? Yes, that is your house. You need to do those things. You need to stay on top of your child. Mm-hmm. You know, if you have alcohol in your house and you're not home and the alcohol's not locked up, is your child taking a few swigs of that? Because we know, based on science, that development of the brain goes up to age 25. So if you have a 16 or 17-year-old drinking alcohol, what is that doing to their growth? Mm-hmm. You know, so there are things that parents can do. You have to take that initiative also to do that. You know, are you getting calls from the school or from a place of employment? He's late, she's late. They're not doing their homework. You know, our school district sends out communication of, you know, your child being late. If your child's late, you get a call about that. You know, find out why was the child late. And sometimes we do that. You know, why were you late? My car broke down. You know, I've already gotten calls from our patrol officers. Hey, this child was just in a car accident. Everything's fine. They're okay, but they're going to be running late. That's great communication. I've now relayed that to the school district. We know what happened to that child, but you as an adult, you're getting a call from the school. Why is your child late? Why is your child missing work? You know, those are the things that you as an adult need to look at. Mm-hmm. You know, that big picture.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you an impossible question, but you brought up cell phones. In your professional opinion, what's the right age?
You know, I'm not sure if I can give you that answer, Mike, but again, you might have a 15-year-old who acts like a 5-year-old. You might have a 12-year-old who is a lot more responsible. I, as a young man, when I grew up, my parents gave me a lot of responsibility. If you're going to do this, this is what you need to do. Now, we didn't have cell phones back in those days, but to get privileges to become a driver, you know, you had responsibilities at home. So it's hard to answer that question, but I believe your child needs to show some form of responsibility. And
Gotcha.
that is adhering to the rules at home, adhering to the rules at school. You know, if mom and dad say, okay, you get home at, you know, we dismiss at 2:35, you can play outside till 5 o'clock, you come in, you do your homework or whatever, and you eat dinner. You know, if you have a child who's not following those rules, then do they deserve that device? Because that device is one of the most important things to a teenager. It's important to all of us, but at that age, you know, it's very important, you know. So again, I think a lot of that bounces on, do you have a responsible child that's going to follow rules and regulations? whether it's at home or at school? Are they listening to adults? Or are they blowing people? Are you rewarding a child who's being disrespectful to school officials, to teachers, to even you, to a brother and sister? Is that something you're rewarding a child with? So I think a lot of that falls on the responsibility. And again, I've been a police officer a long time. I've seen people who are in their 30s that act like they're teenagers, and I've seen teenagers who have a lot of responsibility, and it could be their home life. You might have a father or mother who's not in the picture. It's a single family home, and maybe I've seen this before. Mom works third shift, and that child, whether they're 15 or 16, is responsible for younger siblings. So again, is that person exhibiting responsibility? Then reward them and say, hey, this is what happens at 10 o'clock at night. The phone gets shut off. I have friends who do that with their children. Turn it off. It's done. Technology's done at 10 p.m. Are they following those rules? Me, that's just my personal opinion on the responsibility of a cell phone.
So political. Sidestep the whole thing. Unbelievable. Should be a politician. All right. So obviously, we're always going to have families in different situations. We're always going to have kids in different situations, and we're always going to have challenges at school. One of the questions I wanted to ask, and I know you and I have talked about this before, is as a parent, if you do find out from your kid there was an incident at school, what should parents be doing? Like what should because obviously the parents need to be involved, but they don't want to step on anybody's toes or do things the wrong way.
Just so I have clarification on, so something happens at school.
They witness an incident or they're involved.
So they're
in
not
incident.
directly involved.
Either one. Okay. So what's the answer? They're a witness to an incident, whether it's a bullying incident or an assault or a drug, something they see drugs being transferred over to somebody else. Number one, hopefully they would know somebody at school that's trusted to them. It could be their guidance counselor. It could be their teacher. It could be myself as a police officer. It could be one of our school administrators. Not every child is going to feel comfortable talking to somebody. Your next avenue, I would say, is at home. Is there somebody, whether it's mom, dad, aunt, uncle, guardian, maybe an older brother, an older sister, then they can entrust that information with, that they can reach out to a school official or a police officer. And it doesn't have to be me. It could be, let's just say the incident occurs at Wilson High School at 5:30 at night. This is now divulged. A parent can call the local police department, which would be Spring. Our officer would take that complaint, find out what's going on, try to identify everybody, and then refer that to me. I would look into it, and also the school officials will look into it. Now, we've exhausted all those means, and we don't have a child who wants to do that. There is an app. It's called Safe to Say, SAFE, the number 2, SAY, Safe to Say. That is an anonymous platform that students or parents can use. You submit, once you go on the website, they will ask you questions, and you provide as much information as possible. Now, with that being said, the more information, the better. If you say in this Safe to Say tip, the kid was wearing a black shirt and he had jean shorts on, and it happened at 2 o'clock, that's not a lot of information. You've just now told us what a lot of kids are wearing during the day. But if you're able to articulate and say, yes, in the F wing at 2:15, I saw 3 people in the hallway, and this is what occurred, this is what they were wearing. I can go back, a school official can go back and watch our recordings, our camera recordings, to see what happened in that hallway. So the more information, the better. And again, it's an anonymous platform. We are receiving that information and following up on it. Now, the downside to that is if we have to ask more questions, we really can't. A lot of our cases are able to be looked into based on that information. So again, there are different avenues for a student who witnesses something to provide that information. Now, to sort of go a little bit further, if there's something that happens in the community, all those things are still available to them. I mean, Safe to Say is not school specific. It is a platform to be used for a school official or police department to look into.
So when someone fills out on Safe to Say, they download the app, they submit it, it goes to the local
So
police.
What happens, it goes to Harrisburg, and first off, we have to make sure that the school is correct, because we have a Wilson School District in the Lehigh County. So each school has their own sort of identification, and then each school district has their own list of people. So for example, I'm on that list. So when the Safe to Say tip comes, myself and 3 other people receive that tip. And then we as a unit decide, is this a police matter? Is it a school matter? Is it something that we might have to contact somebody else?
And just not to interrupt you, but
go ahead.
Safe, T-O,
The
say?
the number 2.
S-A-F-E, and then the letter number 2, S-A-Y.
.com?
I believe it is. But if you just put in safe to say, it should come up.
So incident reporting platform.
Let me check on my phone real quick.
Yeah, I'm interested because I never knew this existed until you mentioned this to us a couple weeks ago, and I thought it was amazing. Let's say related. Let's just try.
Is it for high school only, or
No, it can be used for any platform. It could be elementary, middle school. It could be just a general. Somebody's going to report something. Now, again, that's facilitated through the school. So again, if we have somebody who, okay, and Craig has it up.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so it's safetosaypa.org.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Got it.
Yeah.
Nope,
No worries.
we tracked it down. Okay, this is an amazing resource. I think most parents probably don't know exists.
No, it has been rolled out to the schools, but again, it's mostly going to be student or juvenile based.
Okay.
But again, it's a platform that can be used by anybody. And again, now most of it has to do with school, but you can leave other tips on there. It would just be that law enforcement will look into it.
Okay.
Now, depending on the severity of the tip, if it's sort of what we'll just base it as a general tip. It would be something that would be handled the next day. Let's just say you submit something at 10 o'clock at night. Safe to say holds that tip till the next morning. Now, if it's something where, let's just say, for example, a student reports that they just got off of Instagram or Snapchat and their friend is doing something that is possibly harmful, that tip would then get sent to Safe to Say, and then they would contact us by email and then by phone.
Okay.
So for the numbers they have on file, they contact us. Now, we've had tips, I'll be honest with you, we've had tips at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning that they can't reach anybody. So what they do is they contact usually our department, because most of the campuses are located in Spring. So they call the on-duty police officers working, and then hopefully they can find the information through databases that we have. Now, again, the more information you provide is more beneficial. If you just say, I was just on the phone with a friend and he's drinking alcohol, that doesn't help us.
Right.
We need a name, we need an address, something that we can look into. Or leave your information and we can call you back. Again, it's an anonymous platform, but if you don't know that information, you might be able to say, I can tell you where the house is, I just don't know the address. Because again, we have a lot of students that don't take note to what an address is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
We're going to take a quick break here, just a technical break. We'll be back in just a second, and we'll get into some more questions. Thank you, Officer Johnson.
Yep.
And we're back. All right. Technical tragedy averted. So I am so sorry, Officer Johnson, but we're back in the saddle here. So we were talking about Safe to Say and just kind of going through some of the finer points on this and how to use the site. Is there any other resources like this that
is the most predominant one that we have that's issued by the state. Again, you can make calls and conversations, but that is an anonymous platform that is used across Pennsylvania. It is in some other states, but it has been rolled out to the entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
somebody told me there was a hotline too, or I don't know if that was true. Nobody could tell me the number. They just said there's a hotline.
I know there's like if you have somebody who needs help, there's teen hotlines.
Maybe
for
that's
that,
what they were
but
talking about.
For anything that you're reporting school district information that you want to use Safe to Say.
That's
if
kinda
you're
like-
not going to physically address somebody.
This is kind of like a school crime alert,
Right.
like what they have at
Right.
Berks.
Yeah,
Okay.
so like we have on our Facebook page and our Spring Township stuff, you can submit online complaints and we will follow up with that. So that's
Okay.
what it's sort of like, primarily dealt with the school. Now, if you have, we talked about a witness. If you have a victim of something that's occurring, again, we encourage you to talk to a school official, a teacher, a guidance counselor, a principal, again, myself. If you're not somebody who feels comfortable doing that, again, we ask you to talk to a trusted adult. It could be somebody at your church, it could be a parent, a guardian, all the things we've discussed. Again, if you run into, you don't want to address that, Safe to Say is there. But again, it's anonymous. If you want the police or the school to be aware of it, you're going to have to provide us with that information.
Okay.
Now, again, we can follow up with it based on the information. But if we have a crime that's committed, part of my responsibility as a school resource officer is to follow up on that crime. And when we have a crime, whether it's in our community or at the school, you need a victim. You need somebody reporting that crime. Now, again, we've had students and we've had people in our community report crimes that have occurred, and we would like, obviously, for the victim to, work with us so we understand what happened. But that doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Okay.
Now-
Does that happen a lot where the victim won't speak?
Yeah, I mean, again, you have it at the school level and you have it in the community with adults. People don't want to be involved or aren't going to cooperate with primarily law enforcement. You know, when you have crimes, specifically when you're dealing with, you know, in the community, when you're dealing with drugs, you know, that's sort of a shady underworld that people don't want to be involved in. You know, so if you're buying
Gotcha.
and selling drugs, you're not going to really call the police if you're the victim of the
Right,
crime,
yeah.
saying, listen, and we've had it. I mean,
Yeah.
in some of the stories in a police officer's career, you're going to have people who have been robbed by people that have been selling drugs because they're going to buy drugs and they've been robbed of their money or they've been robbed of their drugs, and they do report that to the police.
One of the things we often hear with internal threats and also bullying is retaliation.
Right.
They're afraid of either retaliation from those that are doing
Right.
the threats, or also, you know, retaliation in other areas of my kid might be cut from this program or things like that. What do you say to parents against that?
Well, if you have an incident occurring at the school, you know, the school is going to do their best to work with you and your child or children to alleviate those headaches. And that could be that you're going to move classes around so those children aren't in the same classrooms to the best of your ability because you're in a public school.
Sure.
You know, the high school we'll use, for example, that's a large campus. So we might give them walking routes, okay? You're going to remain out of the D wing and you're going to walk this route. Again, those are things you're trying to work with. Now, some of our smaller schools, you know, elementary, you're not going to see that type of activity, but our middle schools, the West and Southern campus, they're big, but they're not exceedingly large. So again, you might have to facilitate that by walking this way or saying to the teachers, hey, look, period 3, these kids are in class with you and we've had issues with them. So you're going to try to do that on the school level. In the community level, because sometimes, you know, you're going to have things that roll out of the school into the community, and you're going to have things that occur in the community that roll into the schools. So again, people should be on their alert all the time. You know, a lot of times we see it, whether you're a police officer, you know, or whatever, you see people with their heads down and they're playing with their phone. That's not situational awareness. You're not aware of what's going on. So again, if you have an incident with somebody, and again, juvenile or adult, you know, keep an eye on your residents. You know, if your child's going to be home alone, tell your neighbor. Communication is very paramount. You say to your neighbor, listen, there's an incident at school. You know, I don't come home till 5 and my child gets home at 3. For 2 hours, can you just keep an extra eye on the house? Or can my child call you, or can my child stay with you? So again, let the police department know if there's issues, because then we can sort of go from there. If there is a form of harassment occurring outside of the school or inside of the school, you know, we need to know those things. What can parents do? You know, again, it falls back to knowing what's going on in your child's life. You know, having communication with school officials, with your police department, with your neighbors, a trusted adult. You know, you might have a older sibling who's home during the day and works, you know, third shift. You know, can you make sure you're awake when when your brother comes home or your sister comes home, and keep an eye on them? Those types of things. You know, if somebody's going by your house yelling things on a bicycle or in a car, we all carry cell phones. Record that. You are allowed to record in a public setting. You know, and then you can show the police, like, look, this kid drove by and yelled these obscenities at my house. We can see that and follow up on that, and then in turn show that parent, you know, if it's a child, or use that in a court case if it's an adult, or whatever it may be. So because people want to see what's going on, you know, that's why we wear body cameras. That's why we have dash cameras. That's why, you know, a lot of businesses, houses of worship, schools have cameras in them, because people want to see what actually occurred.
Yeah, we brought up internal threats like violence and bullying. Where do you draw the line between the two, or do you? Are they one and the same to you? Or?
You know, in the crimes code, there's bullying and there's cyberbullying. That's a recent addition to the crimes code. Cyberbullying is going through social media, through some type of device, and harassing or bullying somebody. You know, I might see you in school and call you a name, or I might bully you through the day. That's a form of bullying. But now after school, I jump on Instagram and I create a fake account, and I'm now making a fool of you, or making fun of your sexuality or how you dress. That is a form of cyberbullying. You know, if you have somebody who, you know, when you have physical contact between two people, whether they're 15, 35, or 45, and we get into a pushing, shoving match, that's a form of harassment. You know, if you have somebody who punches somebody and there's an injury, that's an assault. You know, but you can also have other criminal activity occurring after that. You know, you might have subject A assault subject B, and we arrest subject A. 2 weeks later, subject A is now on Instagram bullying this subject B, that's another form of cyberbullying, and that could be another charge. So again, you might have an incident occurs, but then there's more that stems from that. So they are itemized in the crimes code, and one of those is cyberbullying, which was added a few years ago, and it's a form of harassment or bullying, but done over social media.
See, I don't know. In some ways, I think the cyberbullying is even worse.
Yeah.
Because at least when we were kids,
Right.
we all had bullies. Everybody had a bully. But when you left school, at least you had sweet few hours of life without your
Right.
bully. But with the internet,
Right.
you go
There's
home and the bully follows you
nonstop.
home. It never ends.
Right, you have that constant connection if you monitor that. If you put your device down, which a lot of kids don't, you won't see it. You're going to hear about it because students talk about those things. The next day, as soon as you get in, did you see what was posted on Insta or this person's story? So yes, you don't get away from it, regretfully. Like you said, Craig, it's a great point. It stops, but now it doesn't. And kids are up 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and this goes on. Based on things that we've observed as police officers. From other, from victims or from people reporting, like, hey, this has occurred at 1:42 in the morning. Most of us are asleep, but it doesn't stop.
Which just brings your point of take the phone
Right.
away.
Right.
It's
Right.
your responsibility.
I think maybe I need to take your phone away. like 2 days a
Right.
week or something. Enhance your calm.
So I know we're almost out of time. Do you have any last pieces of advice for parents?
My biggest thing, being a little bit older now and a little bit maybe wiser, is just to be involved in your child's life. A lot of times we see adults, and adults are guilty of it too. You hand the device off, and that's it. But there's so much responsibility because within seconds, you can look up any website you want. Within seconds, you can send a picture or a text to somebody across the United States. And when I do civics classes at the school, I tell kids, I can take a picture of this classroom, and I have friends in California and Florida. Within 2 seconds, that picture can be sent, and that's where it ends up. So, my biggest thing is be involved with your child, especially with the cell phone. First off, you should be, again, it might sound old school, but you should have quality time with your children, whether that's a dinner or a time that you can talk about your day. Put the device down. We go out to restaurants, and I'm sure you two can attest to this. You look over at a family of 4, and everybody's on their phone. Don't get me wrong. There are things that we have to do as adults and probably as kids, but there should be just a break from it. But be involved. Know who your children are hanging out with. The more information you know, the better off you are. We get into social media. Know your children's passwords, because we run into a child runs away. And years ago, when we were kids, you might say, like, oh, I'm going to run away to here. We talk to parents, and we say, listen, a lot of times they're going to communicate through whatever, social media. Well, what are your kids' usernames and passwords? I don't know. That puts us at we're behind the 8 ball to start with, because they could have corresponded with another student, maybe from another school district, saying, look, it's bad at home. I need a break. I'm going to Johnny Smith's house. We might not know where Johnny lives, but we can do some research. Again, in the beginning of this podcast, I said we communicate. These police officers in these schools. So we're able to call Mifflin, Weiser, or Weiser, and say, look, do you have a student by this name? And it's, we've handled matters that way. But again, as a parent, when we go to your house and you say, I don't know anything, what are we supposed to do? We don't know where to look, because we don't know. As kids, we grew up in our school districts. We only knew our kids. But these kids now hang out with Mifflin, Weiser, Reading, Exeter. I don't know all these kids. So again, be involved with your child. Know what your child's doing. Know the people that your child is affiliated with. Try to get last names and even addresses. Because if I show up at your house and say, well, my daughter hangs out over in Governor Mifflin, I don't know the street. It's over by, we'll say, like the food store, Giants over there, I think. Well, that doesn't really help me. There's a lot of streets over there. So be involved. Play an active role. Again, turn the device off at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. Let your kid take a break from that stuff.
Yeah.
So that would be what I would have to say. Yeah.
Officer Johnson, that was all awesome.
Yes.
Thank you so much for spending half an hour with us. Hopefully we can have you back on.
Oh, you definitely
hopefully
can.
soon.
You definitely can.
Do you have any final thoughts before we sign
No,
off?
I just want to thank you. We're very lucky to have you.
Yeah,
So
thank you, Lisa Marie. Thank you.
All right. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. And, be safe.
Thank you.
All right.